Up on it. And we've got Gillian Hailstones with us as Deputy CEO of the Beatson Cancer Charity. Morning, Gillian.
Good morning.
And as you know, things would have it, you and I sat together yesterday at a charity fundraising event for Beatson Cancer, and we chatted a lot. You're Deputy CEO of Beatson Cancer Charity, but you've also been through a cancer diagnosis yourself. And one of the things that you told me, and I hope you don't mind me saying this because it's really chiming with what Claire said.
No, not at all.
That you were telling me that your son was very young and you thought Christmas was close and we'll hold off until after Christmas, but then, events took a turn and he'd noticed stuff that you didn't even think that he'd noticed.
Yeah, absolutely, Kaye. We had, as you said, made the decision to not tell him until after Christmas, thinking that we would let Christmas happen and he wouldn't need to be upset by anything. And then we were in the car one day talking about something that was coming up in January, and it got to the point where in the conversation where I would have to actively tell him a lie about me being able to take him somewhere when I knew I was scheduled for an operation. So I just took the opportunity to then explain to him that actually I wasn't well, I was going to have to go into hospital for an operation. And the first thing he said to me, which totally and utterly sort of took me by surprise, was, "Is that why every time your phone goes, you've been leaving the room?" And I had not been aware that I had been doing that, and I had not been aware that he had picked up on any of that at all. I thought I was doing a really good job of keeping everything normal and making sure that he wasn't aware that anything was wrong. And it really, as I say, was right at the very start of me having conversations with him. It was a really clear reminder to me that it was important to be honest with him and to tell him as we went along and as we found things out, to tell him in that time so that he had the confidence to know that we were being honest with him and that nothing was being kept from him, and also to give him the confidence to know that he could ask questions if he'd spotted something or noticed something and it was starting to worry him.
Obviously, Kate has got 3 children, 6, 8 and 10, and Tessa was talking earlier and hers spread from 10 up to 16 and 17. I mean, it's what's appropriate for each child, but then if you've got more than one child in the family, then the kids are all going to talk to each other. That's a difficult situation to manage as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think children at different ages and stages in their lifetime and their development will have different needs, and they will also be able to understand the information that you're giving them in a different way. And I think starting off with all of them together and talking to all of them together in a language in a way that the youngest one's going to understand is your first port of call in that circumstance, because then you're telling them all together so nobody feels like there's a secret, nothing's getting hidden from anyone. But what that lets you do then is go on and talk to the older children in a more detailed way. Once the wee one has heard the news and had their response, you can then follow up that conversation either individually or together if your older children are closer in age. And it lets you just keep developing the conversation. But by talking about it in the first instance all together, then that really shows again that nothing's been hidden and that actually everybody's allowed to ask questions in their own way, in a way that makes sense to them. And you just measure the information that you give them by the questions they're asking you and by the conversations that are taking place.
I mean, Claire was saying with her youngest, well both of them initially, she avoided the word cancer. And, I can see why there's just so many connotations to cancer, isn't there?
Absolutely. And I think I'm going to say we were fortunate. So I don't know if it's the right phrase to use, but we've had quite a lot of people in my immediate family who have had their own cancer experience. So it was something that was in and around our family and had been. And we had used the word cancer. And I think because that's the work that I do, I talk to my children, or at that time, I've got 2 other children now, but at that time my son knew I worked for a cancer charity. He knew that was what mummy did. So it wasn't such a scary word for our family. It wasn't a word that he was hearing for the first time in relation to me. So I think that was a big help for us. And I also think my husband's a nurse as well. So I think with our backgrounds then, again, we were lucky that we felt comfortable using those words and we felt comfortable talking in that way. If it hadn't been for that, then I can completely understand why to use the word cancer for the first time when you're talking about yourself to your children can feel like such a big thing to do, and it can feel like such a strange word to use and a scary word to use.
What age was your son, Gillian?
He
6?
was 6. Yeah, he was 6.
And what did he ask you?
He asked, I mean, even though he knew, he'd heard the word cancer and he knew, he did ask me, what did that mean? And when I was talking to him about having an operation, he asked me, so what are the doctors going to do? What's the operation? So as we were driving in the car at the time, and this was a bit of a spontaneous conversation, because in my head I'd planned to sit him down and do it all in a very organised way. But actually, when the moment arose, I felt it was more important just to sort of take that opportunity. So when he asked me what was going to happen and what did cancer mean and what was the operation going to be like, I said to him, it's a bit like a banana, and you get a bashed banana and there's a wee black bit in it. Well, my cancer's just a wee bit like that black bit in the banana, but the doctors are just going to cut it out. And once they cut it out, then that's it gone. And a bit like the banana, I'll be well again, and the black bit will be gone. And he seemed to accept that. Not sure whether that's the best analogy in the world, but again, I was having a conversation in the moment, and I think sometimes it's really important that you trust your gut instincts and that what you know your child best. So you can read all the books, you can look at all the information that's available online on how to talk to your children, but when you're in that moment, I think sometimes the best thing to do is trust your instincts as a mother or a father, and know that you know your child best, and use words that you think might make sense to them, and talk to them in a way that you hope will make sense, and then check in and say, does that make sense, or was that a bit silly? And what that does is allow them to ask questions.
Sure. And what about, so going through the treatment, which can be really arduous, different again for different people. Did you feel the need always to be putting on a brave face and sort of know everything is fine, or were you able to be low in front of him? Hair loss often accompanies cancer diagnosis, not always, which is very visible to children. How did you manage stuff like that?
I think we took the kind of approach, and again, myself and my husband felt quite comfortable talking about, because we both were aware of what was going to happen, and both of us were quite aware of the side effects of the treatment that I was going to have. So I had surgery, chemotherapy, and then further surgery. So we were able to sort of explain as we went along what was going to happen. So for the hair loss, for example, I did know that my hair was going to fall out when I was having chemotherapy. So I'd sat my son down, spoke to him about the fact that my hair was going to fall out. He first found that funny at first, and he was laughing, and my dad's bald on top. So he understood, and he was saying, so you're going to look like Grandpa, and he thought this was very funny, and we had a bit of a joke about it. And we looked online at wigs and different hairstyles, and we did make a bit of a joke about it, because I was trying to help him to feel a bit relaxed about it and not scared by it. And when it came to the point where I knew we were going to be taking my hair off, because I made the decision that I wanted to just shave it off myself as it started to fall out. So I had quite long curly hair, and I'd had it cut short, and then I'd had it cut shorter again in advance of it coming out. So when it came to the point of my hair coming out, we'd spoke to him about that and said, Mummy's going to shave her hair. It's up to you. Do you want to help me? You can be part of it. Or if that feels a bit too scary, then don't you worry. You can go to bed, and we'll get it done tonight. When you wake up in the morning, then all my hair will be gone. So at first we thought this was funny, and oh yes, I'm going to help you shave your hair. But then when it came to it, the tone of him changed, and the atmosphere changed a little bit, and he was obviously very anxious about it. So he decided he didn't want to help, but he wanted to be there. So we sat him up on the kitchen counter, and my husband shaved my hair, and he just sat and watched, very, very quiet. And I said to him at the end of it, so what do you think Mummy looks like now? And he said, oh, everyone's going to think you're a man. And I said, but look, I've got boobs. They're going to know I'm not a man because I've got boobs. And with deadpan face, he said, Mummy, everyone's going to think they're man boobs. And then we had a bit of a laugh about it. And I was thinking, thank goodness I'm okay about this, because otherwise he would be giving me a real sense of concern. Yeah. But hair loss was one thing that he did find difficult, and I think we talked about this yesterday. One thing that was particular to him was he didn't want me to come to school to pick him up without my head covered, because I made a decision not to particularly wear a wig. I had a wig and I had hats, but quite often I didn't wear anything, and I just walked around with my bald head. And he was comfortable with that in all elements of our life, apart from pick him up at school. He didn't want me to come to school without my head covered in some shape or form. So we just talked about that. We agreed that that's what I would do, and we worked with what he felt was comfortable.
And And how is he now? I mean, do you think he's moved past it and that is very much, ancient history, or does it have a lasting effect? And that's not necessarily always a negative effect.
No, I mean, I think he's 15 now, and I think he's okay with it now. I'm not aware of any sort of lasting effects that he's had. Again, we talk about it honestly if it comes up. The one thing that was a bit of a kind of taking me by surprise, about 2 or 3 years after I'd had my treatment, I'd kept my hair short after it grew back in again. And it came up randomly in conversation one day, and he said something about, but when are you going to be well again? And I said, but I am well again. That's me recovered now. And he said, but your hair's not grown back. And I said, oh no, my hair has grown back. I've just decided to keep it short. And in his head, he'd obviously made an association with my hair being short and me not being well. So I actually grew it again after that, because I thought, I want this for you to feel comfortable that actually everything is okay again, and that mum's well. And that's the only time I would say since my own sort of cancer experience that anything's cropped up that's made me realise he was still thinking about it and it was still in his head.
Gillian, listen, thank you very much indeed for being so honest, and I'm sorry to make you go through this conversation with me twice in 24 hours, but I know it will be of great help to people listening, so thank you. Gillian Hailstones, who's the Deputy CEO of the Beatson Cancer Charity. I think this is in the minds of lots of people over this